Mm-hmm.
You got
No.
okay. So Megyn Kelly opens up and spills the beans on her annulment with Barron, right? So she comes out. And
Her
she's
annulment
like,
with
her
husband
first
talking
husband.
with Barron.
She's talking. Yeah, I mean, isn't that obvious?
I just wanted to make sure.
Did I make it sound like she was married to Barron? So
We knew what you meant.
all right. Here's what happens. She explains she was married 16 years ago in a marriage, and she's been married to a new husband for 16 years, and something in her made her want to return to the faith. She's friends with her first husband. They both decided, hey, let's go about the annulment process. She's finding it very difficult, and the church is so rigid and very, she's finding all these hard things about, why these men are standing in the way and I'm not allowed to receive communion and all this stuff. And these are the situations that Francis tackles with fiducia. So not fiducia, this is a Morris, right? So this would be a situation where Megyn should be able to go to her priest, and her priest can go, okay, well, without the annulment, your heart's in the right place. You can go. What people saying Barron blew it, but I actually was pretty happy with Barron for saying, look, the reason why you think there's all these roadblocks is because the church holds such a high regard for marriage, right? But in reality, somebody needs to sit down and talk with Megyn Kelly and say, Megyn, if your first marriage was a marriage, like it's a marriage. Like you can't just make God who you want him to be. If that first marriage was like, it's almost like we're afraid to have these conversations with people where, look, if marriage is not, I mean, the way I explain it to my children and to my loved ones, like my sister who went through a divorce, she tried to tell me that, she didn't think her marriage was valid. And I'm like, look, what you're saying is you think your children are bastards, right? That's what you're saying. You're saying your marriage is never valid. Your children are they're illegitimate. Like, you have to think about the logical conclusion of where you're going with this. You have to really think about, if the Eucharist gets consecrated and that host becomes the body of Christ, you cannot unconsecrate it. And marriage is no different than that. If it's a sacrament, and once that union comes together, you can't undo that union. So she's going through this annulment process. The thing is, she'll get the annulment. She just has to be patient. The church hands them out to everybody now. She just doesn't want to wait.
90% of them get approved or something like that.
Almost all of them.
Crazy
So
number,
it's just a matter of somebody sitting down and actually catechizing her to understand why marriage is what it is, and explain to her that it's the symbol of God. Like the reason Christ calls the church the bride, and all, like, somebody needs to really sit down and catechize her.
Yeah. Do you think
that's the other
like
thing?
Pride?
100%.
Like pride in her, but then, I mean, it's kind of obvious that it's pride in her, because she's like, she falls into what I call like sacramental entitlism, right? These are the people who demand communion on the hand no matter what. They demand that you should always be able to go up and receive, even if they've never been to confession, etc.
They see it as a right instead of a gift from God.
Exactly. It's sacramental entitlism. That's just what it is. But I'm wondering, in the context of like the priests and the bishops who kind of downplay all of this, right? Instead of just like shaking her and saying, hey, Megyn, like the Eucharist is real, marriage is real, etc. I'm
your
wondering
soul
if a lot of
is
it
in danger. Do not play with
it's
this.
immortal
Like,
danger.
this goes to the Mike Lewis conversation, right?
Speaking of
Mike, all right, he wants to. All right, we'll do it on YouTube, definitely, because I think that there's a fundamental difference in the way we see things, and I think it's not just we're trads, because even before I was a trad, I would have felt the same way. This isn't a.
You think the guy that
thing.
calls me an anti-Semite views things a little differently from us? Maybe, maybe a little.
I think it has something to do with temperament, maybe, and there's a few things going on, but it comes down to what Megyn Kelly's dealing with here. It's an overemphasis on the mercy of it. These people think they're entitled to get into confession with a few minutes about how many people have. That's a joke to me, because I grabbed the priest and I said, "Get back in there."
That's funny. So I was just going to say that I think that like these priests basically, and many times, like you think, okay, like, are they ashamed of the gospel of Christ because they're not actually warning people about the reality of sin? But I wonder if I think that's definitely part of it, but I think a lot of it is also just pride in the fact that they just think that they know better than
Yeah.
the entire moral theology history of the church.
Okay, it might be, or it might just be horrible catechesis, the
Mhm. That's
influence
fair,
of
yeah.
Protestantism on everything, right? So Megyn Kelly goes to an Episcopalian church because she can't get what she wants. So she's just like, I'm going to go to an Episcopalian church and I'm going to go. And she
Still not
goes
getting what she
there.
wants.
She goes there and hears a woman priest at the Episcopalian church give a homily on trans issues. And she's like, oh,
The
wait a
state
minute.
of American, quote, conservative journalism.
But that's the point, right? Like, okay, you want it your way. You're going to go to this Episcopalian church because you're going to go somewhere that'll give you the sacraments, but you're going to find a false version of Christianity there. Like real Christianity is difficult. It just is. It's not easy. There are times where I sit in the pew and I don't get up to receive. There's a lot of times where I have family members that don't get up to receive. And it's not because
yeah, my mom was away from communion for 20 years because she couldn't bring herself to confession, but she knew not to go up to communion.
So that's actually an interesting thing, because even when I was away from the sacraments, because when I was younger, I went and did some wild things. The couple of times I would go to mass, I would never get up and receive because my mother catechized me well enough to know, if you're in a state of mortal sin and you haven't been to church, you do not get up and receive. Like, I always understood that. It was, I had that much instilled in me.